I was told by my parents that at a very young age I was taught to read. Eventually, when I was about 1 year old, I started writing some letters. Mainly from the books that I read. I started to learn how to form these words by writing them with my hand through various gestures. And this was a concept that this, being learned at a young age, is going to advance me in my intelligence. It's going to make me smart, it's going to make me more educated, and the idea, at least that my mom expected, is that I'm going to be more eager to learn. In terms, if you look at me and you ask me, was she correct? She was. I was very eager to learn, and I read a lot as a child, and I thought I was very smart. I got very good grades, got A's all the way through high school, and I always loved learning. I still love learning. However, it never was presented to me that literacy and this definition of literacy was beyond just the ability to read and write until college. I often got questioned this throughout my time, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, but it never really hit me until senior year when I was called upon to really reflect on the idea of what literacy truly is. That it's more than just the ability to read a word and write a word. It's the ability to interpret those words, analyze those words, critically think about those words, and put them into an action. Put them to the picture that you see. Say, for example, a simple word and something we see every day, the sun. The thing that lights our sky, brings life to various plants. At a simple age, the word sun, spelled out S-U-N, would be a very simple thing for a young child to learn. But does that child understand what that sun does? Does that child understand all the purposes of the sun? Is that child truly literate just because he knows how to write sun and say the word sun? Thinking about this, I've had a lot of time to reflect on how I approach literacy and how my parents approach literacy throughout my life. And so this is a time where I've gotten to think about all the readings that have taught us about literacy and really reflect on what I feel is the true definition of literacy based off everything that's been placed in front of me. Now, the first aspect of literacy that I was approached with was Brandt's ideas of sponsors in literacy. Now, these sponsors have a specific goal of teaching us, enabling us, and guiding us through reading and writing, but at a stronger purpose. Not just the ability that I can take these words, regurgitate them out, and give the definition that a teacher gave me. These sponsors' jobs were to give us these words, give us these interpretations, and allow us to explore and discuss. Allow us to really think about what these words mean and really think about what we're reading and what we're defining. And I often think of what were my sponsors. Often sponsors you may think of are just teachers, as they're the ones that usually teach you to read and write or teach you what you're reading and what you're writing. But in reality, I think my family, my friends, and even my significant other, my girlfriend, has pushed me with my literacy. For example, my mom always pushed me to read. I would read various books, and she pushed me to read what I enjoyed. And sometimes it wasn't reading words, sometimes it was reading pictures. In fact, I often enjoyed picture books because I like to see what I'm reading. I can often put what I read into the picture that was illustrated about what I was reading. And then I had friends that pushed me to read various things such as articles, especially in high school. I was very interested in sports, which often got me to read articles and started to get me into reading statistics. So not necessarily reading words, but now reading numbers. How do I interpret these numbers? What do these numbers mean? For instance, in a basketball game, you say someone shoots 45% from field goals. And you have to interpret, what does that 45% mean? Is that good? Is that bad? And who comes up with these interpretations? And there's a lot of articles that describe these things. And so that combined words with numbers, something a little more complex, a little more advanced that I wasn't able to quite understand until I was at the high school age. And then my significant other, who is also in a health profession like me, as I am a nursing major, has pushed me in the medical world. On what to read, how to interpret the medical world. I often learn things in a broad concept as a nurse, having to understand things on how to treat a patient at a very symptomatic level, while my girlfriend learns things in exercise science at a cellular level, really breaking down how your body works in ways that I don't even understand, pushing me to further understand these general concepts by going deeper, which is really an inspiring concept, and the idea that you can't learn on a general level just to read and write. You gotta learn how to interpret these words and put them into action, make them something. So I started to reflect back on what did I read that really got me into this literacy idea. And so when I was a child, I often remember reading the Magic Tree House books. They were my favorite books because they really got me to be creative in my mind. It allowed me to put pictures to things. The book was full of pictures. I often pretended like I was with them. And that was another way of being literate to me. As I think back, it's something to be able to read the words and be like, wow, I really enjoy what's going on in this book. I want to know what they're going to do next. It's something else when you say, I can put myself in their place. I'm going to act out what they do. And then sometimes I catch myself thinking, this is the way the book went. But what if they went this way? Because this is what I think I would enjoy doing. And twisting it. It brings out a creativity in you, which is something literacy needs. You can't just be general with literacy. Dig deeper. It brings out a creative side, this passion in you that you don't have. Literacy is passion. You have to have passion to enjoy reading and writing. You have to have passion to take it to that next level. Magic Tree House was one of those books where I like to take it to the next level, often pretending I was a part of those adventures with those two siblings in the books. I also read animal magazines as well as dinosaur books. Fascinated by animals. I thought they were awesome. Sometimes that would lead me to pretend I was an animal. When I was a young kid, I loved to pretend I was a dinosaur. Also loved to pretend I was a cat, specifically a lion. And then I got into middle school and high school. I started to advance myself more. I caught my creative side leading me to books leading towards fantasy. I read the Chronicles of Narnia. I read Percy Jackson's and the Olympians books. Those were some of my favorite books. I even read some of the Harry Potter books. Now, I didn't read all of them. I did watch the movies. Now, this also led to an interesting idea that I didn't just need to read the books to understand literacy. Being able to read the words and understand the words is one thing, but sometimes these books weren't picture books. I wasn't able to picture it. I noticed my creativity kind of failing, and these movies brought that creative side back out of me. And so when movies came out, like the Chronicle of Narnia book, that really brought a picture in my mind on how I could see things that I read. Now every time I read a book that doesn't have pictures in it, I picture it myself. It makes it way more engaging. And that's an idea of literacy that I think is important. Getting out of the word world and making it into a reality, make it into a picture, make it into a visual, especially if you're a visual learner. And there's this idea that Freire, in the importance of the act of reading, that reading is beyond that word world. It's more than just reading the word itself. It's interpreting those words, putting them to action, and putting them to your own vision. So this led me to think, well, how would I define literacy then if it's all these different things? It's pretty difficult to define literacy when there's multiple different things. I don't want to create 13 different definitions of literacy. So we'll start with the Blake and Blake reading I read, which defined the meanings of literacy according to them. And they often said that it's not just the words we write, but words we interpret. And it's something that is always going to change. We always have to adapt to literacy. There's going to be different standards, there's going to be different ways to read, different ways to interpret things, especially with technology and its advancements today. So taking all these readings in and everything I've read in my past, it allowed me to think of what I feel literacy is. And I try to bring it to that basic level to combine everything that literacy could be and their subgroups into its competency to function in a specific area at the most basic level. Now this can be very subjective on what you think is the most basic level. What is the most basic level of literacy when you're health literate, or technologically literate, or economically literate? But it's the understanding that there are those multiple literate categories you can't be competent in. So just because you're not competent and can function on an economic standpoint and understand economics at a certain standpoint, but you can understand health literacy, doesn't mean you're an illiterate person, but it could mean you're illiterate in understanding the basic economic functions, or you might be illiterate in basic technological functions or computer functions, but you might be literate in health functions or cultural functions because you've studied abroad, you've studied cultures. You don't have to be literate in everything to make it through life either. And that leads to the idea that all literacy, to me, is learned. It's not an inherited trait. You're not born literate with culture. You're not going to be born as an infant and understand what Muslim culture is, what Asian culture is, what American culture is, even if you're just born into it. You might be born into American culture, but you got to understand it. You got to live it, and you're going to learn it. So this leads to the conclusion of what I've experienced with literacy, coming back to the idea that there's a passion involved with literacy. You become literate in something because you have a passion in it. I have a passion for health. I have a passion for helping people. So I become very literate in health. I've also become what I feel very literate in emotional intelligence. I've learned to understand people, how to communicate with people. I've also learned how to treat people, how to understand their health, and how to educate them on it. I don't have a passion for technology and understanding how it works. So I'm not very literate on how a computer works, except at the most basic level to be able to click things. Now, some people would say I'm not literate to technological function just because I can click on a browser and be able to search something. What happens if something goes wrong with the computer? Can I fix it? Does that make me literate? Or does that make me illiterate because I can't fix the computer and I have to take it to the IT group and get it fixed? Also comes to the idea that it does require work to become literate. I didn't just say I have a passion for health and just know health. I have to read, I have to understand it, I have to adapt to all the different changes in health, but I also have to put myself in its place. I have to apply it. And that's what nursing school has really taught me to do. I learn all these things, I read them, but it doesn't mean much if I can read and understand it and memorize what's on a page if I can't apply it in the real world. I may be able to read how to put an IV in someone's vein, but if I can't go do it in the real world, am I really literate at being able to do it? And it comes to the final idea for me that it's essential for everybody to understand literacy. No matter what path you go down in your life, you need to be literate in whatever path you go to. Everybody's going to have a specific direction they want to go. Everybody has a specific path they want to go. Whether it's in the health field, whether it's in political science, whether it's in sports, something drives you. You have to read and be able to write and understand that stuff, and then you got to be able to apply it to be truly literate. So in conclusion, if I had to sum up a final definition of literacy, taking all that in, literacy would be your ability to apply what you're able to read and write in a specific area. And my name is DJ Greiner, and this is what I feel is my definition of literacy.